George, you want to? Okay. There you go.
Yes, that's correct, Madam Mayor. So this one, again, it was some casual conversations with a member or two of the city council. Followed up with staff and discussing it as well. And the suggestion was to let the council have the conversation around whether or not to do it. And maximum committee size, as you mentioned, is 7, as Councilmember DeGoli mentioned, is manageable at 7. So to achieve this immediately with this particular suggestion, some current members would need to, terms would need to cease immediately. Alternatively, if the council supports the merger of the two committees, but wants to do it by not reappointing future members, when terms expire over time, you could do it that way. And then when the number of members drops to at least 7, then the committees would automatically merge based on the resolution language.
Okay, thank you. I see Councilmember Winner has his hand raised. I would hope that you have a comment on this.
Yeah, so I don't know if you were going to take public comments first. I don't have a question. I understand what's being offered, but I do have a comment.
Oh, okay. Why don't we save your comment until after we have public?
Yeah, because I see one of the people from the bike ped has his hand up.
Mr. Lugar, well, let's see, any other council member have a question to clarify this suggestion here? Okay. Members of the public, Jerry Lugers, hi. Would you like to make your comment now, please?
Yes, I've been on the BPAC for a year, and there is significant overlap with the Transportation Committee. Even tonight, that's evidenced by item 15, which never went to the Bicycle Pedestrian Committee, but involves pedestrians. And this isn't the first time that has happened since I've been on the BPAC, that the Transportation Committee has handled things that we thought should have come to us also. I think it's a chance, you know, it's a small town. This is the way that Woodside runs their committee. It's called the Circulation Committee. It's bicycle, pedestrian, and just general transportation. And I also thought it's a chance to reduce the amount of staff time, because you have to have a staff member at every meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any other member of the public would like to make a comment about this item? Yes, hi, we do. You have to unmute yourself. Yes, please do. Unmute.
Yes, Carol Collins. Sorry, I was trying to figure out how to raise my hand. I support the merging also. I'm on the Transportation Committee, and I feel like we discuss it, they discuss it, but it's 3 months apart, and so it's hard to have a lot of continuity. Anyway, I think it's a great idea.
Thank you, Carol. Anybody else want to weigh in on this? Yes, Suzanne, you need to unmute yourself.
I just have a question. Why have they been separate, and what is the reason for people wanting them to stay separate? I'm hearing pro and I'm interested in con just for my own.
Okay, that's a good question. So far, we have not heard any comments from anyone wanting to keep them separate, except I think we did get a public comment letter sent in, right, Anthony?
We did.
Got a letter from the San Mateo advocate of the Silicon Valley Bike Coalition.
Right. Which, you know, I read it and felt that, you know, her points were well taken, considering her perspective.
Can
Anyway,
someone
George-
summarize that?
Yeah, George is going to summarize, I think.
Well, I wasn't going to summarize the letter, sorry. But the other part of the question was what was one of, and Councilmember Winner can do that. But one of the other issues was, why is there a BPAC to begin with? And one of the reasons that communities have BPAC is for funding purposes through the MTC. Communities are required to have a committee or a body that covers bicycle, pedestrian, safety issues. Those can be, merged with other committees. That's not the issue, but you must have a committee that does that. The town originally had the transportation committee, but when we needed the BPAC, it was created for that purpose.
Mhm, mhm. Okay. Diana?
I would like someone to answer her question because there was a letter I remember skimming that
Yeah,
said in their
I'll do
opinion
that for
that,
you, Diana. I'll do
thank
that.
you.
I can
Thank you.
pull the letter up if you guys would like as well.
I
It
think
was,
that
it
would
was,
be good.
it was sent to everybody.
I didn't get to
Yeah.
print it out, and so I don't have it
Okay.
handy.
Same. I would do it, but I don't have it either.
Here,
Right.
I'll share it.
Yeah, if you could share that then we can, certainly look at it.
The city or the town also received a comment from John Langbein, I believe, on this item.
That's correct.
Well, I didn't see that.
No, I didn't see that either.
That's the one that I referenced earlier in the meeting. It just came in.
Maybe it's on my phone.
So if you just bear with me.
Well, you guys are wanting to go through it. Do you want me to make my comments or are we not going to do that?
Councilmember Winner, okay, she's got it up here. This is from
Okay.
John Lagerham, and he's a current member.
That's correct. If you'd like, I can go through this. pretty
Yes,
quickly.
because I
don't know.
can't read it very
Sure,
well.
sure. So, current member of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee. Overall, I don't have any major concerns with the notion of merging the two committees as they often examine the same issues. The concern, however, will be the makeup of the combined committee. And he references the draft proposal. He suggests that the wording needs to cover motorists too. He also recommends that there be some specifications about the makeup of the committee as to the number of active transportation users, motorists only, etc. So I read through this earlier, and if you guys will allow me to paraphrase, it seems like there is no contest of the actual merging again. It's more some public comments about how we design the layout and the organization and the structure of the committee, which staff can certainly do, post meeting.
Okay. Do you have the letter from the?
But I think you need to add to that letter that he does make the comment that there was a requirement for the Bike Ped Committee that a member of that committee be a member of an advocacy. I don't know if this is accurate, but what the letter says is that there was a requirement that a member be a member of an advocacy group and or have knowledge of county-wide active transportation issues, which I assume had some specificity with respect to bicycles.
Yeah,
That's correct. That's in the MTC rules for
Yeah.
putting together the BPAC. We reviewed those, and I don't think that we would have an issue getting an applicant that's qualified to meet that requirement.
Okay, yeah, he just stated that he observed or had the opinion that that was struck from the draft proposal. So maybe that wasn't the intention.
We can certainly clarify that in the resolution to make sure that we, make it clear that all BPAC requirements will be adhered to in terms of selecting members.
Okay, Diana.
I thought that I read that in the other letter, they had the opinion that the committees don't do the same thing and suggested we look at the minutes of the meetings that they don't do the same thing. Was that referring to this?
No.
No,
I can share that one as well.
Mm-mm.
but if I could comment on that, I mean, I think that's exactly right, Diana. I looked at that letter kind of carefully, and the author, she observed that there could be some overlap in the goals between the two different committees, but that she felt that each committee had oversight of things that were very different, and merging the two, she said, might lead to neglecting some vital pieces. She said, they have different agendas, that compete for the same funding. And she said that some vital aspects might be lost in the weeds if you merge them. Personally, I felt like those were certainly legitimate observations, but there was nothing specific in that. I wanted to get some information that there are these specific conflicts, that merging the two could result in actually some examples of things being lost, and those weren't provided.
Right.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Okay, thank you, Anthony, for bringing that up. You can take it down now.
Yep.
Okay, so let's see. Yes, we have Councilmember Winner.
Sure. Okay, so hopefully I'll try and answer some of your questions with my comments. I'll start out with a little bit of, information. Though, at first I was surprised to just open the pack on Saturday and see this item. I spoke to George about it, and he said that he'd spoken to a few of you, including Mike. And first off, if I had been made of this idea, I would have asked the origin. I would have asked, well, what does Mike think? Because he's the liaison to the Transportation Committee. That didn't happen. I agree that both groups focus on things that are similar, that are both on or near streets. The bike people put lines on streets, make sure that there's ample space for bikes, and also pay attention to pedestrian issues. Okay, so they both are looking at things, but that said, due to the potential cross alignment of some of these objectives, I felt that having a transportation committee member be a liaison was a good idea to make sure that there was cross communication. And I feel that should happen. It should happen actually with every committee. But I do think that the nature of the two committees is different. The Transportation Committee is focused on either quickly moving traffic through our town or impeding it so it will go somewhere else. The Bike Committee is making sure that bikes are safe while they're riding on the road and that we give good pedestrian walkways, something that we do not do at this point in time. And so I think that putting the two committees together is not appropriate, because I think that the big focus would be on moving the traffic through the town and not paying attention to where the safe routes for bikes are and where the safe routes for pedestrians are, and improving that over time. Secondly, as outlined in the staff report, the plan will be over time to reduce the number of memberships if we're merged to 7. This would eliminate where 3 residents could potentially participate. And we're doing that at a time that we sit around and say, hey, certainly we wish we would get more people to apply for jobs. And in fact, I'll remind you that in June, there were 2 additional people that wanted to be on the Bike Ped Committee, but we didn't select them. So there are people that want to be on this committee because they think that we need to improve and spend money to improve the bike lanes and the bike actions. In summary, I don't believe that this recommendation should be approved, nor should it be studied any further. I think the COVID pandemic has brought forth many, many, many more bikers and walkers. The majority of our preferred pedestrian routes are in very poor condition, something that we have yet to take up. And I think it's something that we do. I won't say that they're unsafe, because that makes it a liability. But if you've walked around the streets, especially if you're out jogging at night and you're off to the side of the road, you know what I'm talking about. All right, the majority. So,
Okay.
yeah, and not finished. And in some areas, we've got signs that actually force pedestrians into the streets. I think that that's wrong, and I think that's something we should address. Furthermore, the majority of our major bike paths that we've identified as wanting to be Class 2 have been designated as Class 3, which allows them to ride in the middle of the road, which frustrates drivers and actually causes an unsafe situation. So I think there's a lot to do here in the bike area and focusing just on bikes. I think there's also a lot to do in the transportation in focusing on things that we're going to do from this study. So I really think that they're separate at this point in time. Perhaps they should be merged sometime in the future, but now is not the time. That's my point.
Thank you, Councilmember Whitmer. Any other council member have a comment on this? If not, I think that Councilmember Widmer has made a lot of very, very good points about the importance of both of the committees. And we've had a quote unquote transportation committee for a very, very long time, which is focused on really kind of complaints or issues that have been brought to the transportation committee by residents, involving their neighborhood. It has grown over the years to be more of a, and I should let Councilmember Vice Mayor Lemprus talk about this because he's on the committee every month, and it's a broader look at the transportation and traffic flow in our town. In fact, last year, we had a very, very robust outreach to the community, trying to get community input about community concerns of transportation, both traffic cut through, traffic congestion, things like that, as well as it did include bike routes. In my opinion, there is a lot of, or could be a lot of synergy between the Transportation Committee and a Bike PED Committee, because we're both using the roads and the trailways through our town. And we don't have a lot of dedicated pathways through our town because it's all built out. We don't have bike paths through forested areas or parks necessarily. Hopefully we will have a bike path through our town center when it's finally finished. But so I think there's a lot of synergy. And I think it's an idea that deserves some consideration. And maybe not an immediate merging of the two to offload other committee members, because I truly believe that we need more residents, more committee, public input on these issues. And it's almost like more the merrier, because you get more people involved, then you get to hear more viewpoints and ideas coming to you and to your table for discussion. Maybe there should be regular joint meetings of the Bike Committee and the Transportation Committee so that they can cross-pollinate and talk about objectives and concerns. I don't think the Transportation Committee is blind to the effects of things that they decide on that would have adverse effects to the bike community. And you drive through any community up and down the peninsula, and there are more and more painted bike lanes giving bikes the opportunity to ride alongside cars. So those are my comments. If anyone wants to make a comment on that. Yes, I have a member of the public. Sharam, you need to unmute and you can make a comment on this.
Thank you. The only minor comment I have is that as long as the two committees are, as long as the perception is that they're competing for the same budget items, these committees are going to be at odds with each other. Mm-hmm. So I don't know to what extent. I think I read that in one of the two documents that Anthony put up on the screen. So if indeed the charter for these committees is separate and it looks like they each have a legitimate sort of job to do, then the perception that they are competing for the same funds probably has to be changed.
Right. Good point. Yes. Vice Mayor Lemprus, you had your hand up also.
Yeah, I did, because I've been thinking about this issue. First off, when I asked George a question earlier about whose idea was it, to raise this, and that unfortunately I raised in the context of the rail committee. I actually was talking about this because this was not something that came out of the transportation committee or out of me or anything else. And I just wanted to be clear because Bill raised that issue.
Oh, he said he spoke to you about it.
Yeah, which is probably true that we spoke.
Which is what I
but-
said, I'm not
No, I
saying
gotcha.
it's your idea. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So from my perspective, there's a tremendous amount of overlap between these committees. And I think that, I'll stick on the positives of merging them would be there's a tremendous amount of overlap. They don't meet very often, so it's really hard to coordinate between the committees unless you had a joint meeting. But if you want to have a transportation committee, look at the placement of a light or a stop sign or something like that, and then have a bike ped committee talk about the same thing, it puts the council in the position of either waiting several months for the two committees to hear from each other's feedback or to get two different recommendations. This isn't the end of the world, but to get two potentially different recommendations out of the committees. I think the biggest downside to merging them would be simply you'd lose a sense of priorities because I think the bike ped committee probably puts a higher emphasis on bikes specifically than the transportation committee would if you left the transportation committee, dealing with all circulation issues, as someone mentioned that Woodside has a circulation committee. So I think there'd be a different perspective because you wouldn't, the transportation committee would focus really primarily on cars first and bikes secondarily, whereas the bike committee would focus more on bikes. Having said that, it is. I want to be clear. The transportation committee spends a lot of time talking about safety and pedestrians, and it does come up at every time we look at doing something. You hear the members of the transportation committee say, "Well, how will this affect bikes? How will this affect pedestrians?" And we've got an item on the calendar today that talks about a light, and clearly it's near a school, and those conversations went on there. So all of which is to say, I see pluses and minuses to doing this. I don't think it's critically important that we merge or keep them separate. I think it could work either way. But I do think it's a little bit inefficient the way we do it now, and there's a lot of overlap, and that's kind of my opinion. So I don't feel terribly strongly about it either way. I just want to let that out.
Okay. Councilmember Hawkins-Manwellian, do you have a opinion on this?
I think what I heard from this is that one of the more important things would be to try to get the two committees to have more communication between them.
Mm-hmm.
And so the suggestions of liaisons or meetings between them is definitely something I would immediately. I don't feel strongly about whether to merge or not merge them. I would feel more comfortable if the committees themselves weighed in on this of what they thought the solution might be. But I do see that getting them to work together would be to everyone's benefit.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember DeGoya, any other last comments?
I've got a couple comments. I thought that what Bill said was very important, and he's been very involved in providing leadership on the bicycle issue in particular throughout the town for many years. And one of the concerns I would have in a merger is for the bicycle focus to lose the primacy that it currently has on the bike ped committee, which I think Mike addressed in his comments. I recognize the value of the efficiency because there is overlap, but I think the best way to address that overlap is for these committees to meet together on occasion. And maybe that should be planned, that they meet, at least twice a year, I would say. And I see the inefficiency in, I think it's the next item on the agenda, which didn't go before bike and ped, but went before transportation, and it has some impact on bike and ped. And I think what Mike said is extremely relevant, that when you go to both committees to have to weigh in on issues, it ends up delaying the issue by months. And that's a serious problem that we need to be able to figure out. And the best solution I can think of is for the committees to meet together on occasion. I will also say, I think there's enormous value in us having more residents actively participate in decision-making in our town that helps us to make those decisions that structure the things that impact our lives, and in particular, the quality of our lives. And having decent bike lanes and pedestrian protections is definitely an improvement to the quality of our lives. So I want to do everything that I can to encourage more residents to be involved. And when we have more people that are requesting involvement in the bike ped committee than we have spaces available, I really don't want to reduce those. But I want to increase the efficiency. So I think there's a very legitimate issue being raised here, and we just have to remain cognizant about how to best address it. And I agree with Diana that, hearing from the two committees is really important, and what the residents think on those issues. So for now, I would opt out to strongly encourage. I'm not sure how often the committees meet. I know some committees only meet once every other month rather than every month. And if it is indeed once every other month, then I think that they ought to meet together twice a year. If it's more often, then maybe they can meet more often than twice a year. But I think that would be really valuable for them.
But we could also include, increase the frequency of the meetings, but I agree with you that joint meetings, once or twice a year is probably a really smart thing, especially one meeting during budget time when we're looking at the budget and making recommendations. I agree with that, and I think that was an excellent suggestion.
Right.
Okay.
And I don't want the budget to control everything, because the issue that's coming up this month in terms of the intersection at Middlefield, it isn't really a budget issue. I mean, there is a budget issue in terms of the staff time, because it would be great to reduce one staff time. But I think it's more important for us to properly address these issues that impact the quality of our lives.
Okay. Thank you all. Good discussion. So wrapping it up, I think that the consensus, are we going to take a vote on this at this point, or do you have enough for direction?
I believe the council's already voted on the rail committee portion of it. We could just strike from the resolution any of the BPAC amendments and adopt that resolution just as the rail committee change.
I think that's what we would like to have done.
Motion for that.
We'll have a motion for that then.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Can I get a motion to strike what George
Second.
said? And we have a second. Okay. I think that did Mr. Widmer or did Diana second it?
Widmer.
I said second, but maybe we said it at the same time. I don't know.
Okay. Doesn't matter. Widmer. So we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hawkins,
Yes.
DeGolia,
Yes.
Widmer,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Lemprus,
Aye.
Mayor Lewis.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Nice discussion, everyone. Thank you for all your input, and thank you, the members of the public, for your input also. Item number 15, we've already been referring to it. It's to modify the hours for the right turn on red restrictions at the Middlefield Road, Oak Grove Avenue intersection. And do we have our Public Works? No. Okay, we'll have.
Not here this evening, but I'll give a brief overview, and then you also have Commander Larson as well on the line to answer any of the public safety questions and references. At the Transportation Committee meeting in March of 2021, the committee reviewed the hours associated with the no right turn on red restrictions at the respective intersection. After deliberations and public comment and input, the committee recommended the right turn on red restrictions be revised to be from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. This recommendation was brought to the City Council for consideration in May 2021. Following council discussion, the council requested that staff reach out to area residents to receive input regarding the potential change and return it back to the Transportation Committee for further review prior to reconsideration by the council. On June 2nd of 2021, staff mailed out a letter to area residents, it was with the standard notification stretch plus some additional area up in the DeBell area, advising of the potential change, that the restriction would be from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and requesting input prior to the enactment of any of those changes. Staff received a number of emails in response to that letter. Most opposed the change. After deliberation, the Transportation Committee recommended that the hours associated with the no right turn on red be changed to be from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. That's what's brought to you this evening, is that recommendation from the Transportation Committee to make that change. And there's some additional comments that were received via public comment that are attached to the staff report. And Anthony, I don't know if we received any additional beyond what's in the staff report.
No, we just received the one from Mr. McKeithen.
Okay. So I can turn it over to Commander Larson, and he can elaborate any further on the public safety component that was addressed, or you could go right to comments and then use staff as Q&A.
Actually, if Commander Larson would go ahead and kind of brief us on what the public outreach revealed, I think that would be a good thing. Commander Larson, thank you.
Yes, hi, thank you for having me. In terms of the public outreach, I read the letter. I don't have a copy of it with me, but in terms of the police department would support the change. And the reason for that is the school hours and the student activity around the school have changed over the past years with regards to start and end times, varied schedules, and before and after school activities. And we also have a Senate bill coming down, or it's already been passed, and it was Senate Bill 328. And what that is doing is it modified, or it added to the educational code. And starting next year, and it goes into effect July 1st of 2022. And that mandate says that the school day for high schools, including high schools operated as charter schools, shall begin no earlier than 8:30 a.m. And so that will drastically shift the time period that schools will be in session for that MA high school, because they will not be allowed to start school until 8:30 a.m., which can also push their day further back into the afternoon.
Okay. Thank you, Commander Larson. Any member of the council have a question for clarity for George or Commander Larson on this? I would just like to ask, I mean, so basically this request comes from the potential safety of the school children walking across Oak Grove and Middlefield, getting to and coming from MA High School?
Yes, yeah, that's my understanding as well. It's for the safety of the pedestrian, the bicyclist going to and from the campus pretty much throughout the day.
And was there any consideration given to the potential inconvenience of the motorists, the residents having to use that intersection, going to and from work or going to and from the grocery store or anything like that?
There is consideration for them. I think it would be fairly minimal, the impact that it would have. And given the area, they would also have alternate routes where they could avoid that intersection altogether, because we are only talking about one intersection. They could exit out through Ringwood. They could go Green Oaks down through James. So the residents in that area do have another outlet to use that doesn't involve that intersection.
Are you kidding me?
So I think Councilmember DeGoya has a question.
Yeah, I do. Commander Larson, I have a question, and maybe it's for staff, but I think it's principally for you. Would there be, what would the reaction be if instead of it being an hours-based thing, it was a person-based thing? Like, you can't turn right on the red whenever a person is present. Or I understand that is the case, and the sign that indicates that on some red lights near other schools, not at MA. But what would the reaction be to that?
Yeah, I think that would be a good solution to help mitigate any of the other issues, given that the time frame for this would be expanding. I think that would be appropriate to put something in there that when children are present, something to that effect. So then it would also limit those hours. So when we do have those special events or things like that, the students are safe, and when they're not there, the residents or whomever is using the roadway can continue to make that right turn.
So I see our city manager has his hand raised. You have a.
Just a follow-up for the commander on that question from Councilmember DeGolia. When enforcing a when children are present type of restriction, how do you enforce that? Do you have to be present to witness the incident, or is it something that can be reported after the fact?
It would, for us to enforce it, would be something that the officers it would have to occur in the officer's presence for them to enforce that.
Well, if somebody got hurt, then you would know that they were present, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, this is true, but we hope
Come
that
on.
doesn't happen.
Councilmember Whitmer, you were the next one. To
Yeah,
call on.
okay. Well, I'm sorry I jumped in with trying to bring some clarity to it, but I looked at the accident report and I didn't see, there were a lot of accidents there, but most of them were from people coming northbound and they were turning left. And I don't believe that there were any southbound turning right, whether it's on red or whether it's on green, that impacted a pedestrian or a bicyclist. There were 2 bicyclist incidences, but they weren't from people driving southbound, which is the only way you turn right on Oak Grove, which is what you're trying to limit. So if in the 20 years that, or whatever it was, I said 2012 on, in the number of years that we've had, there's not been an accident then. These are high school students, okay? And they don't have situations like that when they're down at the grammar schools. So I just didn't see, maybe I missed one of those accidents, but can you point one out to me?
I don't have the traffic study and I don't have knowledge of there being any accidents from someone making that right turn. And this idea came about not from the police department, but the idea behind it was for the safety of the students.
Okay. All right. Before I go to the public, because I see several hands raised and I want to give them opportunity to make comment. Any other comment from council members present?
Do you want comments or questions?
I want questions because I'm going to go to the public.
Yeah, because I have comments.
Yeah, understand. Okay. So I'll call on Carol Collins and then Jerry Lugers from members of the public.
I submitted an email and I think Anthony was going to read it for me.
You're muted, Anthony.
Yeah, give me one moment. Sorry, you sent that to me? Ms. Collins, I don't.
You're muted, Carol.
I looked at the agenda. It said I'll go find it. It said the emails would please submit your comment by email. So I did that. Okay, here we go. Not that one. Okay. One moment, please.
Take your time.
The current right turn on red restrictions are outdated, as we've all discussed, at the intersection of Oak Grove and Middlefield, and they don't match the school hours at all. As a resident of Lindenwood, I drive in Oak Grove across Middlefield both ways most days. The intersection is quite tight, and often cars on Middlefield turning right onto Oak Grove do not stop until they are across the crosswalk and often into the intersection. My husband and I have had to stop many times to let right turns on red to proceed ahead of us, even though we have the right of way on the green light. So they don't yield, which creates obviously a problem when students are around also. Additionally, high school students come and go for many hours before, during, and after school. And there's a large group of Hillview students that ride their bikes through the intersection. I just feel it's much safer for all to limit the right turns from all directions from 7 to 7 to keep our kids safer. I'm Carol Collins on Deodora Drive, 78 Deodora Drive. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you. Ms. Collins,
the
if
next-
you would send that to me, I'll make sure it gets posted online, but I don't have a record of receiving that, so my apologies.
Well, it says I got blocked.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Now when I open my send, it says I got blocked.
Oh,
Yes.
goodness.
I get blocked all the time, Carol.
Having saying it live is fine too. I'm okay.
All right. Well, it's been recorded.
Thank
So thank you for
That's
reading.
right. You're gonna be unblocked now
Yeah.
too.
There you go. So Jerry, would you like to make your comment now?
Thank you. So I bicycle a lot, 7,000 miles last year. I go through that intersection frequently. I walk to Menlo Park, so I go through that intersection probably 3 or 4 times a week walking. And I just don't see a problem with the existing situation now. I don't see significant numbers of people crossing in that area except when school starts and when school lets out. And those are covered by the existing times. And this is another example of an item that didn't go through the bicycle ped committee. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other member of the public would like to make a comment on this? And just for the record, we did receive a letter from Smith and
Ethan
and Smith. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's part of the agenda record. I do have a raised hand from Councilmember DeGoya at this time.
Only if the public has finished giving their comment.
I think they are. There are no more raised hands.
Okay. So what I had a couple things to say about this. I think the issue is a very important issue. I take it really seriously. I'm glad that it's been raised. I think that is a very difficult intersection. And we all know that it's a worrisome intersection because there's so many kids around it. And our priority for a long time has been to prioritize the safety of routes to school for children in this town. And we know that our population doubles every single school day with the school population. So this is a really important thing for us to focus on. At the same time, I take very seriously the comments that we got from a very large number of residents who were opposed to changing this time from the current time to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. because of the inconvenience that they would experience. And I understand that there's value in having some flexibility here that the current times don't give us because of the changing times that kids are going to be present, particularly with this new school law that Commander Larson referenced. So in my mind, and I'm just raising it, I'm no expert on this subject, but in my mind, it would make the most sense to say that you can't turn right on a red when children are present. And I understand that's true at some other schools. And if that works, that gives more flexibility than the current time zone, but it gives those that need to be able to make a right turn, not to have to wait for a very long wait at that intersection until they're given the ability to turn right. And in my mind, that would be a better solution than making the right turn required, prohibited from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Widmer.
Sure. So, I've looked at this report. I've gotten a lot of calls also on this report. And so, I've got some comments also incorporating theirs plus my own. So I looked at the data in the staff report and I looked at the police report, as I've already mentioned. I live near the intersection, not as close as the people from DeBell, obviously, but, I use that intersection a lot too. And I, like many people, I didn't get that letter that was in the staff report. And I got calls from people in DeBell that said that they didn't get that letter in the staff report. that said that went out to these residents. So I don't know how we determined who got that letter to say, hey, what do you want to do or don't you? So that's one item. Okay. So secondly, the staff report, comments on the survey, or the survey wants this. And my comment on surveys, as I've mentioned many times, is that only 1 to 3% of the people respond. Furthermore, the survey was conducted during the summer, and it was a very difficult thing to put any comments in that weren't what the consultant wanted. So they already put their ideas in, and so there was no place for you to say, wait a second, I want this or I don't want that. That got changed, but again, that was in the middle of the summer. But that said, the input that's included in the staff report, which is identified as attachment 3, which is on page 243 of the pack, does not say change the light for no turn on red. Rather, it says signal coordination. Now, signal coordination, I think, is a great idea. I firmly support coordinating those signals or synchronizing those signals between Oak Grove, Ravenswood, Ringwood, and then Willow, because that is a terrible, terrible set of 4 lights which substantially backs up traffic and it's hard to get through. If we do that, the traffic flow would be improved immensely. Secondly, I understand that the times that the students primarily come and MA has already changed their time to have the kids come later. So I don't think there's going to be any change with this law here at MA. The majority of the students show up sometime between 8 o'clock or 8:30, 8:45 or 9 and 3:30 they leave. That's the window where the most student traffic is covered. And we took that into consideration when we set changed the signs a couple of years ago as identified. One also needs to look at the signage at other schools where they have much younger populations. These schools do not have the wide swath of times for no turn on red. And in fact, they just say when children present. So I would hope that high school students are better equipped to cross a street that has a light, that has an activation button, and has a crosswalk safely. Finally, I looked at the police report. Many people are coming northbound are turning left. That's the problem. That is a big problem with the accidents. If we're really interested in cutting accidents, we need to focus on that. Our discussion is only on people going southbound, and there's just a small percentage of that. So what happens there at that light is there is very little visibility when you're going through there. So I can understand what Carol was saying. I think that we should change, and I've mentioned this to George, the arrow. So there is an arrow, a protected arrow to say if you're turning left, you can turn now. Maybe we should extend that time a little bit, but at the same time, when that time expires, it should turn red to stop people. Because what's happening is people are trying to shoot through because they're tired of waiting. And that's, in many cases, I've seen it. That's how accidents are occurring. So, I think that we should look at that, and we should maybe, revise what we want to do at this location. The traffic backup today on Middlefield is terrible, especially during the morning hours and the evening hours. And it is helped by that turn on red. But with the backup traffic, we are having substantial cut through traffic, and causing it to have no turn on red at Oak Grove is going to cause even more substantial cut through traffic in the residential areas. So I think due to the many, calls that I've gotten, and plus the negative responses that came in the letter, where there were 13 opposed and 2 in favor and 2 that really didn't make a decision one way or the other. But I don't really support this change, and I think that we should keep what we changed a couple of years ago and leave it as is. So, for all the reasons I've mentioned.
Okay, is that all? Any more?
I think that's enough for me.
Okay. Vice Mayor Lemprus, would you like to weigh in on this? Or have you already?
No, I have not. Yeah, I guess I've got a slightly different view than Bill does on this. Rather than looking at the data, it being I heard from a number of experts, as I consider our police officers, who are saying this is a dangerous intersection, and that the current signage is not providing sufficient protection for specifically pedestrians, but others at the intersection, because the hours don't match up as well as they might with the hours of activity at that intersection. So in any event, I think we're in a situation where this is not as safe as it could be. And we could take steps to make it a safer experience for kids going to school. I know they're high school kids, but they're still kids going to school. The Rick's idea about when children are present, candidly, I don't think that came up at the Transportation Committee meeting. And that may be a nice compromise in there. I think it raises certain enforcement issues, but I think that may help the situation. I did read the letters from residents, and I know people would prefer to have as few restrictions as possible at the intersection. I think that's what we're balancing. So in any event, where I come out on this is I don't think the current situation is ideal. I think that it makes sense to expand the hours of no right turn on red, or to have other restrictions on right turn on red, try to increase the safety specifically for MA students in that area. So that's where I am. I would support, some expansion of those hours. I think would improve things, and that's where I would be.
Thank you. Diana, did you want to weigh in on this?
I guess I really like the idea of synchronizing the lights and looking at other fixes that might help the traffic. I thought that was a great suggestion. I don't think that because they're high school kids, and I hate to say this, that they're any safer than young kids. So if you drive on Stanford campus, you'll see that as well. So I like the idea of having signage about the presence of children, but I would propose that we say pedestrians instead of children. So no right turn when pedestrians are present instead of children. But I wouldn't leave that and take down the restrictions that are there. So I do still think we have to have hours. I am not, where I get lost is whether or not it needs to go to 7 p.m. and how we manage the bigger traffic along that route, which maybe the synchronizing the lights will fix. So it's a little bit of a complicated fix. And I think that I'd like to know a little bit more about what other fixes might help.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay, thank you. So all good input by everyone. And I just want to go back to my first question and basic premise is, what is going to make it safer, as safe as possible for our school children? I had two grandchildren who went to MA high school, their whole times. And I, traveled through that many times, and it was just, it's been a crush. Now, we have short-term memory. It's like from 2021, we really did not have any school kids there. All 2020, we didn't have many school kids there. So in our short-term memories, it doesn't seem like there's that many school kids there. But I do believe that it is a dangerous intersection. And as Councilmember Winner did say, that we really should be putting no right turn on red on the northbound going on Middlefield at Oak Grove, because that intersection is really where a lot of kids cross, because they come out of that area right there at MA and cut across to go to the bus stop down on Middlefield, where the bus picks them up. So there's a throng there, but then there's also the throng that goes directly across Middlefield on Oak Grove and further. I just feel that in listening to our commander, that it is a dangerous intersection. And I think it's a kind of a feel good to say when children are present, no right turn on red, or, or adults or pedestrians at all, but people don't read that and they don't obey it because they become immune to it. Really, it's something that they just, go and they're all, I mean, I saw a blog where cars, a school bus was stopped on Valparaiso or whatever street to pick up children, and cars were going around the stopped school bus to get in front of it before it could pull away. Now, the vehicle code says that when a school bus stops, you stop behind it and you do not move until that school bus moves. So people aren't obeying the traffic laws as it is. And I think that we need to put more teeth into our traffic laws. And so I'm really of the feeling more aligned with Councilmember Lumpers and Councilmember Hawkins regarding going ahead and putting more teeth in our safety right turn only signage and hours to make it as safe as possible for our children there. Because I don't think high schoolers and some of these young high schoolers are still only 13 years old. So that's what I would like to bring it to council for a recommendation that we move ahead with maybe a modification of this recommendation to make it between the hours of 8 o'clock instead of 7 a.m. since the school day is starting later, and maybe instead of 7 p.m. I don't know. I think that school is later and there's also a lot of after school activities. I know some of the kids in sports don't get home until 6 or 7 o'clock at night. So that's my feel. I know Councilmember Winner, you want a rebuttal at this point. I'm
No,
sorry.
it's not a rebuttal. It's a suggestion. It's a suggestion.
Okay. You had a lot of airtime on this, but
No, I feel very strongly about it.
Well, I do too. So I can take up the rest of the council meeting if you'd like.
I understand. I'd like to suggest that we've suggested several things that perhaps the town staff should look at and come back with another recommendation, such as the synchronization of lights, such as putting that red no turn light up there. After it goes from green with the arrow, it goes to a red arrow. Those things I think have a big impact. And I'd like to have this, the town staff consider that and come back with another suggestion, perhaps.
Okay. All right.
At your meeting.
Thank you. So Councilmember Hawkins Manuelian had her hand up a minute ago.
Sorry. I was just thinking that having the full entire block, which we're talking about, 7 to 7 or 8 to 6 or something like that, often in the city, you'll see a more defined one, like just for the morning and just for the afternoon, and it's based on actual foot traffic. So if we knew the foot traffic, we could say, 8 to 10 or, 3 to 6, something. I'm making numbers up. I don't know the times or the pedestrian. And I'm just saying, I'm wondering if there's a way to limit it as a compromise, but have it be more tied to when people are really there instead of doing the whole day. Because in the middle of the day, it's maybe not needed.
I think we talked about that last council meeting. And so Councilmember DeGoya has a comment now.
Yeah. I think the problem is exactly what Diana just addressed, which is it's the hours where there aren't many people present, and to prohibit right-hand turns is a burden. That's an unnecessary burden. So if there's going to be a proposal for 7 to 7 or 8 to 6 or whatever it might be, I'm going to be opposed to it because it's unnecessary. I think that the smart thing to do is to create, I like the idea of synchronization and management of the lights. If we can get the red light to control things, that would be great. But the real issue is we want to stop turns whenever people are present. And that doesn't mean in the crosswalk, that means present. And hold on, Elizabeth.
I will, yes.
I'd let the police give us some feedback on that. And I think Bill's suggestion of the staff and the police department evaluating these options is a good one. And this is a big decision that I don't think we should just make quickly. I think that it has a huge impact on people, and we should take some time to make sure we do this right.
Okay. So I will just say that Commander Larson indicated that it is not such an imposition as you think on people, because they do have other alternatives. They have other choices for their path of travel. The kids do not, because they have to get to the school and from the school. And this is, well, there's the crosswalk at Ravenswood, and that is used quite a bit. Anyway, so where do we go from here? Councilmember Lemprus, Vice Mayor Lemprus, do you want to kind of wrap this up for us?
Well, I just listening to the discussion, I don't think we're ready to have a vote on it right now. And so I think it does need to go back to staff and come back to us. What I'm struggling with is I'd like to have that happen fairly quickly, because from my perspective, we've had a situation where the police and the transportation committee have looked at a situation and said this is not, as it's done currently, it's not really safe. So I'd like to have something that doesn't go on for another 6 months or something. So I'd love to see that, have it go back to staff, have it come back to us with a review of some of the items that were discussed here. This concept of no right turn when people are present, what hours people are there. It might be a good idea, to going to Diana's point, to have somebody do a little survey, sit there and watch the morning and afternoon and see where we are, what hours really line up with activity. So I guess that'd be my recommendation: have staff look at it and come back to us, ideally in a month, and not 6.
Okay. George, do you have enough direction to kind of work on that for us? I mean, I think what I heard was synchronization of the stoplights. That would involve the city of Menlo Park, would it not?
Yes, so that would extend necessarily the timing.
Right.
They want to look at it via some of their committees as well, so we don't control that sort of dynamic. But the direction I heard was look at some sort of signal synchronization, if anything can be done with respect to that for this particular intersection. The potential red arrow for the right turn, folks. Looking at how effective or useful is when PED's present type of signage. And then also conducting some sort of foot traffic survey for times of day. Mind you, that can change based on school hour changes and activities at the school site. So it could be random, different days of the week. But we could gather that information and return that to the council as soon as we get it.
Yes. Okay. All right. I think that if that's okay with the council members, we'll close this item with that suggestion and ask staff to bring some information back to us, and we'll move on. Okay?
Yep.
All right. So item number 16 is the discussion and direction regarding median street tree replacement options for Mount Vernon Lane and Tuscaloosa Avenue. And I'm going to let George.
I'll do a brief overview and then turn it over to Sally. She's got all the expertise in the world, far more than I do with respect to trees. So after the removal of the trees at Tuscaloosa and Mount Vernon, staff met with the interested residents on each street to discuss replacement options and potential constraints. The council asked that we do that and then return it to the city council for direction with respect to tree selection. For Mount Vernon Lane, due to the limited roadway width, the proposal was to plant replacement trees on the side of the roadway along a property frontage. After reviewing the existing plantings and available space, the residents there decided that they only wanted to plant a replacement tree in one location. That was in front of 45 Mount Vernon in the right-of-way planting area. That resident is certainly receptive to doing so. The residents on the street are aware of the maintenance and watering and have agreed to take on that responsibility. With respect to Tuscaloosa, the paved width of Tuscaloosa Avenue is sufficient to allow the planting of the replacement tree in the same median area. However, staff's recommendation is if you do allow that tree in the middle of the road, a small curb should be constructed for the median and some delineators and striping to accommodate it. root barriers and other watering issues would need to be installed as well. So that would add to the town side of that budget. Tuscaloosa residents are interested in as large a replacement tree as possible. One resident indicated they may be interested in donating more money for a larger tree if the size tree that the town's going to plant is not sufficient. The resident would like to know the largest tree that the council would consider. The residents on Tuscaloosa would like it to be the same type as the species removed. That's the valley oak. And then on Mount Vernon, I believe it was the cork oak. But I'm going to conclude my version or my summary of the report from here, turn it over to Sally to add anything additional, or the council can ask questions from here.
Yes, I just wanted to let you know about the two informal quotes I got from two different companies. There are not many companies that will provide that size of a tree and also do the planting. For the 60-inch trees, the height ranged from 16 to 20 feet tall. And for the 48-inch trees, those range from 11 to 15 feet tall. So that's kind of the size difference between the 48-inch box and the 60-inch box. So really what we're looking for is what the council would prefer for size rather than a financial amount. But I'm here for any questions. And there are multiple residents on the call as well.
Okay, Sally. So can I clarify? You were saying that you were just asking council for size and without the financial consideration?
We want you to consider the financial consideration, but it would be more helpful to staff if you could give us a size so that we would have more flexibility when we make the purchase.
Because of the vendors.
Because of the vendors, yeah.
I see. Okay. Okay. Councilmember Widmer.
Sure. When we took the trees down and we had those meetings and we committed that we would put something back, did we commit to a size or like for like, or you know, how did we come in? How did we come in with the two either 48 box, 48 box, no, the two box sizes?
So I was given direction to plant a larger box size tree. Typically, we only plant 15-gallon size or even 24-inch each because our maintenance crew can't plant that size. So in these cases, because they were such large and old trees, I was given direction to do larger box size trees. Per our town policy, we are required to replant, but our policy doesn't dictate what size we replant.
Thank you.
I do, yes, Council Vice Mayor Lempress.
Just some basic questions, I guess, to Sally. One is, Sally, how fast will these trees grow? You know, what's the difference in terms of time between them? And also, how old are the trees that we'd be buying? You know, how old are these trees?
The trees will be a 60-inch box tree is usually about 6-7 years old. So they're not very old. And they're both moderate growers. So they'll probably grow less than a foot a year. So we're not talking about very speedy growth. So that's why we were trying to put them in at a larger size.
Thank you.
Rick.
Yeah, Sally, just question as to on Tuscaloosa, we're more limited in where that tree is going to be planted because from what I understand from the staff report, it looks like it will be planted in the median and there'll be a curb put up around it. And it looks relatively small to me. Are you comfortable with both the 48-inch and the 60-inch trees going into that median on Tuscaloosa?
Yeah, the largest size we could plant is the 60-inch box. I checked them with both of the vendors. And that median, they're able to plant in that median to their standards. But anything larger than 60 inches couldn't be accommodated.
And will the asphalt from the road adversely impact the growth of that tree?
Eventually it will, but none of us will be alive.
Okay.
But yes,
Okay. Thank you.
Any other council member have a question for Sally or comment? Diana? Okay, I'll open it up to the members. Diana, yes. Mhm.
I wasn't clear what there was, Bill asked the question about what we promised. And I wasn't clear what the answer to that was, what we promised at the time we took the trees down. What do the residents think that we're committed to do?
So it's my understanding that that council said that we would replace the trees, but we didn't give a specific size. I met with both the residents and we discussed it, but there was no specific size the council gave to them. Okay.
If I may, I was kind of a witness to a lot of this when it was happening, and I met with residents to try to save the Mount Vernon tree for sure. And then when it had to be determined, that the town would do the best they could to plant the biggest possible tree that they could to help it get going, because these were really giant oaks, and to try to replace, you couldn't do the like size, but within limitations. So I see a member of the public having his hand raised. So Sharam, can you unmute, and there you go.
Yes, thank you. First, very quickly, I don't want to take a lot of time. I'd like to thank the council members, the mayor, the vice mayor, for doing as much as you have thus far. I remember when the tree was being taken down, we asked that a test be done on the tree trunk just to ensure that indeed it was probably time for it to go. And yes, we thank you for having done that test. We do appreciate, as the whole resident block here, what you've done for us along those lines. Secondly, while there was no promise made, and I'll agree with Sally on this issue, what we discussed and what we emphasized and requested wholeheartedly is that it be the largest tree size that the town could afford to give us, both from the standpoint of a financial issue and also from the standpoint of getting a crane large enough in there to be able to bring the tree in and plant it. So that's my comment.
Okay, thank you. I see Rachel has her hand up.
Hi, yes, thank you so much. First of all, I just wanted to start by saying thank you so much to Sally, who's really engaged with us. We actually have the house opposite the tree. I think it's hard to underestimate how undermining in confidence the way that the tree was taken down. And I think it would have been much better if a sign had been put up on it so that people knew it was happening. I also, and we've been back and forward on this, but the argument was that the tree was rotten, but there were people, including in my family, who took photos of the tree, and as it was being chopped down, it didn't look rotten. And it was sort of bizarre that an oak that was over 100 years old was being chopped down exactly the same week as the one in San Mateo Drive, which is obviously in Menlo Park, which made many of us suspicious that it was being taken down, not for reasons that it was rotten, but because it was inconvenient for somebody somewhere. I'm very happy to pay for a larger oak if that's the issue. And I also just wanted to question the sort of curb and the need for the curb. Seems that there's been cars driving up and down that street for a very long time without a curb. We don't generally have curbs or pavements here. You would call them sidewalks. I come from London. That was kind of unusual, but I think it's fine. And so if the need to have a curb around it is a constraining factor, I would just say, can we get rid of that? And one of the things that I discussed on the call that we had with Sally is, now we're talking about planting trees in the middle of the road. Could we potentially offer as residents to pay for a couple more trees in the middle of the road in Tuscaloosa, because we love them and we think it's a lovely sign of our community. And I would just like to put that on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. We have another member of the public, Elizabeth Kerrigan. Hi.
Hi. I live a few doors down from Rachel, and I've lived on Tuscaloosa most of my life. And I have watched one thing we've talked, a lot of us have talked about the size of the tree and all these kind of things. I'd like to focus a little bit on the median, because I watched the median over the years get smaller and smaller, and it was never about the health of the tree. It was for other reasons that it kept getting smaller. And it was never clear when I would ask questions about why did this crew come out and make the median smaller. We used to have a flat median that was dirt, and it had some reflectors on it, so it was flat. It didn't have the curb, Rachel, and it worked great, and everybody stayed away from the tree. And then over the years they added a few things, but then, and it could be a coincidence, but when massive construction started on our street, which we've had some really big projects, the town kept making the median smaller. And I can't help but wonder if that contributed to what Sally's report showed, which are the people that Sally worked with, show that the tree was not healthy. I don't know how the tree could be healthy when it kept getting encroached upon. So I would like to propose that we reevaluate the median and go back to a healthy median, because whatever tree we put in there, we want to protect it. And so we in evaluating what tree to put in, we also evaluate the proper median, because what's there now, the curb situation, that I don't know if that's just a temporary situation, Sally, but the curb that's in there now, that tree won't last long. It's quite limited and constraining. So, I mean, from what I've read, I'm not an expert in these things. I've just read up on it. So anyway, that's my comment.
So can I just ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
What you are referring to as the median, the trees in the middle of the road, you're talking about like the area, the diameter area around the tree, the circumference of the tree, before you got to the pavement of your roadway.
The dirt, it used to be dirt. It was a dirt area around the tree, and it was much more generous than what's there now.
Okay, Sally, and what?
Sorry, can I just say what's there now is absolutely tiny, and only a small tree is going to grow on it. And so I'm English, so I'm using slightly different language. But the curb is basically going to constrain it, and it's not going to be the tree that it should be. And I don't understand why, when we don't have pavements and sidewalks, we have to have a constraining feature around it. And the whole thing to us, and we are very upset, so I'm trying not to be upset, and upset in a British sense, just really sad, it feels incredibly bureaucratic. And I get that Sally's done an amazing job, and I so appreciate her listening to all the feedback. But I just wanted to second it. I don't know why it needs a curb around it, and I don't know why it needs to be constrained.
Okay. So can I ask another quick question, Sally, or Board? Can you tell me what the diameter of that curb, and has it been physically, I haven't been by there recently, has it been physically and permanently installed?
So the curb that is currently there would be removed and a new curb would be put in. Right now, the median width is 19 feet by 7.5 feet. So it's not a very big size median. However, it's my understanding from the Director of Public Works is that we can't expand that median any further because we have to meet the code of the roads. And also, I talked to him also about the curb, putting a curb in, because I don't necessarily like a curb either. But it was told to me that we have to put a curb in as well.
For the protection of the tree, or protection of the motorists to not drive into the tree?
Yes.
And how high will the curb be? 4, 6 inches, 8 inches?
It will be about 4 inches.
Okay. Council member, Rachel, 1 second. Let me let Councilmember Winner make his comment. Now I'll come back to you, okay?
Sure. This is to George. George, I understood from the earlier discussions that the curb was needed because there's a liability. If the tree is the town's, and if somebody drives into it, it's the town's liability. Is that correct? Did I understand that right?
That is absolutely correct. Staff doesn't recommend planting trees in the middle of the road. But if you do, if the town opts to do that, you should, from the public safety perspective, make them comply with respect to medians and reflectors and other requirements per the code. The other issue that Sally touched on was the width of the road around the tree. The paved surface needs to be sufficient for public safety vehicles large fire trucks and such to go by. So widening that into a non-paved surface isn't an option under the current codes for road development.
So just a little history. I'll take a minute. These trees were here before Atherton was here. Okay. They were, and we kind of built our little roads back, 50, 100 years ago, because we're going to have our 100th anniversary in a couple years. Around them, and they were not big fire trucks, and they weren't. So this is all non-compliance that just kind of grew over time. It wasn't something that the city and Public Works and everybody deliberately planted for the beautification of the neighborhood. So to recreate that is a little different in this environment. And I think that's what they're trying to do. So Elizabeth, I see you have your hand up. I know Rachel wants to make another comment. I have another public member, Curtis Smith, who hasn't had a chance to speak. May I let him speak, and then we'll come back to you. Okay, Curtis? Unmute yourself if you want to speak. Maybe he doesn't want to speak. Curtis? No, okay. So Elizabeth, why don't you go ahead, and then we'll call on Rachel.
Just briefly, that tree existed and quite harmoniously with fire trucks and large vehicles. We've had very big construction on this street for a long time, and there were no issues. There's plenty of clearance on both sides. It was a massive tree. The median was quite large, and there was still plenty of room. There were never any complaints. There were never any issues from the residents or from anybody. I mean, I've lived here, like I said, I've lived here since on and off since the 70s, and there were never issues. So that's, for the record, I just want to say that.
Rachel? Do you still want
I just really wanted to say the same thing as Elizabeth. I think it's all nonsense. And to those of us that live on the street, it sounds like nonsense. And you're all elected officials who should be able to make decisions about these things. And the truth is that actually the tree slows the traffic down. And now the tree's not there, the traffic is much, much faster. And it just sounds to me like you're all just repeating what you're told by the officials. And, what's the purpose of having elected members if they're just going to reflect what the officials say? And I just wish you all understood how disappointed and sad people feel.
Thank you.
And there's no reflection of that. And I just couldn't second more what Elizabeth said. We've only had the great privilege of living here for 10 years, but everyone was totally happy with it. The cars could get round it. Everyone could get round it. And in fact, it slowed the traffic down. It meant that more people walked up the street, so people drove slower. And so a lot of what you're saying just sounds like complete nonsense to us.
Okay. So I think Curtis has his hands up again. Maybe he can, and I think you're unmuted now. Curtis?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I fixed my muted problem. So appreciate, first of all, this is the first council meeting I've attended, and we've lived in Atherton for almost 20 years now. And I have to say, I really, really appreciate the council and the staff's commitment and engagement in our community. This was just nice for me to witness to start with, and spending time with us on this topic. And I guess that's number one. Number two, relative to other city issues like, the crime rate and funding our police, I understand trees and replacing trees from a priority standpoint probably comes lower on the list. And I totally get that too, even in a city that's called Atherton, Tree City, USA. So I'm on Mount Vernon Lane. The Heritage Oak that was taken down, we spent a lot of time with Sally. She was super helpful in meeting with us in person and answering all the emails, et cetera. And ultimately we did it. The tree on our road definitely defined our neighborhood and the community, and it was a big part of it for us. So it was a really sad day when it came down. But I thought we came up with a pretty simple resolution to it, which was, hey, we'll plant a couple of trees on either side of it. We'll smooth out the road. There's still a gigantic bump where the old tree was. And so we're hoping that gets addressed soon. But we liked it. And we think the cost of it is pretty minimal given the overall Atherton budget. And then our street in our cul-de-sac also committed to, hey, we'll take care of these trees because this is part of what defines our community and what makes us happy and what makes us happy to be a part of Atherton too. And so those were just my thoughts. But in general, I appreciate the engagement and the city council's engagement and the staff in sort of all of these issues regarding Atherton's. I know replacing trees is probably lower on the list, but it's important to our cul-de-sac. Thank you.
Thank you, Curtis.
Mayor Lewis, if I could just make a note, Sally got a late public comment from Diana Bryan, and I just noticed that she jumped on. So her comment was simple, that she wanted us to replace the tree, but she may be interested in making it herself.
I don't see her.
It's Diana's iPad. I'll give her an opportunity to see if she can.
I don't see Diana's iPad.
She's unmuted.
We've lived across right next to that tree for over 40 years. And I've lived in Atherton area off and on for 60 years. No, that tree has never been a problem. It's been a great tree. And it looks like when it was just taken down for no good reason. So.
This is the one on Tuscaloosa that you're referring to?
Yeah, it is.
Yes, all right. Thank you, Diana. Understand it was, I just have to tell you, from my perspective, I spent the weekend kind of crying when this was all happening, because we really did try our very best with Mount Vernon. And I know that from the outside, it doesn't appear that there's a danger, but it was definitely, the decisions were made for the safety of the residents. So we're here now, and we want to do the right thing. We want to make your community grow with a new tree. Are there, I think Councilmember DeGoya has his hand raised. So would you like to make a comment on this, Rick?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to, I really hear what people are saying, and you've got to understand, we all live in this community. I love to drive down the streets that have a tree in the middle of them. And I drive from where I live, I drive Santiago every day, and there's a tree right in the middle of Santiago. And you're absolutely right, it slows the traffic down. And it is the best possible way to slow down, because you love to look at that tree as you drive past it. So the only reason that as a council, we decided to take that tree down on Tuscaloosa is we were advised by the experts that it was totally rotten. That's what we were told. And that there was, danger to residents and to anybody driving or walking past it, especially when it gets very hot, because that's when limbs drop, and limbs have been dropping over the last week on quite a large number of trees. So that's what we were told. I really see the value in having a tree in the middle of the street. And I think what Elizabeth said is particularly relevant. These trees existed way before we were around. So it's important to honor them. And if in fact that tree wasn't rotten, I feel terribly sorry. That would have been a big mistake. I'm pretty sure we were told that once it was taken down, it was seen to be thoroughly rotten on the inside. So if that's wrong, I can be corrected, but that was what I was told. In terms of the replacement, I think what we should do is we should figure out what makes sense from a budget perspective. We should support the largest tree that we can, and we should enable the residents to increase the size of that tree however they want to, and support them to make the donation. Public-private arrangements are really successful in this town, and we should support that. To the extent that the limiting factor is the size of the opening in the road in Tuscaloosa, where it's going to go in the road, it sounds like Sally said we can put in a 60-inch tree. So in terms of what we're looking at, it looks like we can accommodate it.
Okay. Any other member of the council have a comment on this? I have a chat from Suzanne Pari. Do you want to make a comment, Suzanne?
or you had to ask me to unmute before I unmuted. I just want to say to Rick, the tree that came down on Mount Vernon was partially, it had definitely had some problems, but it was not even close to being totally rotten. And while it's gone, and I accepted before it went down that it needed to be removed, I think that if there had not been a transformer pole next to it or near it, it would not have had to come down. And I don't know what the tree on Tuscaloosa is, but if our wires were underground, we would not have worried about the liability of this tree, or the town would not have had to worry about it. And it's just something to think about, because I think those trees were taken down because they were considered a liability, not to necessarily people and pedestrians, but to the poles that have not been put underground. Just a comment.
Understand. Okay. Diana, and then Vice Mayor. Diana?
I just want to say that the decision clearly wasn't about the polls. I'm one of the few people that couldn't bring myself to vote in favor of it, even though we were convinced and told that it was extremely dangerous for everybody. I was the one person who couldn't bring myself to, even in that case, say, take it down. So I'm totally sympathetic to this, but it was definitely not about the polls. I also personally am very much in favor of undergrounding the wires in our city. And we have been working on that. It's a harder problem for discussion another time. Totally agree with you 100%. But I have to say that the reason why they went down is because we were told they were dangerous to the people that live there. And I don't think it would, anything short of that would have made people vote for it, because we all feel the same way. Everyone on this call does.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Vice Mayor Lemprus. Unmute, yeah. Can you unmute? No. Are you frozen in time? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Can you hear me now? I'm sorry. I was getting a message that I could not unmute, but
I have
okay.
it.
Yep. Very, very quickly. A couple things. One, I know the trees are down and we should probably let that lay, but I want people to know that it wasn't just that we were told it was unsafe. We actually went back and tested them a couple of times to prove that point. So I hope people know that it wasn't a decision that was done lightly or just on the representation of someone. It may ultimately have turned out not to be true, but we tested it and we pushed and we're told that, several times that that's the way it had to be for safety. The thing I was going to suggest, Madam Mayor, is that maybe to move this forward, we could bifurcate the issues a little bit and talk about Mount Vernon first, and then talk about Tuscaloosa, because it sounds like I at least have some thoughts about Tuscaloosa that make it more complicated than the Mount Vernon situation.
Yes, let's do that. That's a good suggestion. So if we can talk about Mount Vernon's tree, and I know we have some residents here, or they were, I think they're gone now, but it's my feeling that we really should, we have the resident at 45 Mount Vernon, which is Mary Lou Timpson, willing to plant the tree on her easement. I heard the other residents say that we talked about planting another tree on the other side. And I don't know if that resident is still on the call. Is that you, Suzanne? No? No, okay. That, to do 2 trees there instead of just 1. Is that something that anybody has heard that before? Council members?
No.
No?
I think it was Curtis Smith who mentioned that. I'm not aware of anything. I see, it looks like Suzanne's raising her hand on something, but George, did we make any representations about a second tree?
Or Sally?
Yeah, so when I met with the residents on the Zoom call, it was my understanding that they only wanted 1 tree on the Mary Lou side of the road.
Okay.
They didn't want the resident on the other side or it was decided that they didn't want to take care of a second tree.
Okay, so let's lay that, I'm sorry, that just kind of got brought up in this meeting, and I wanted to make sure that we weren't ignoring that desire. So I feel that we should, according to the budget that we may have, or the tree sample or the size, I think a 60-inch would be the smallest tree that we should plant at Mary Lou's house. And she knows how to take care of oaks and the residents. And if any of the residents want to participate in, helping to finance it, I think that they're more than welcome to do that. So can we talk through that with council and get an agreement, Mike? Yes.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, but I want to confirm one point on Mount Vernon, and we've kind of assumed that we're moving it off to the side. And my memory from a little while ago, several meetings prior, was that the street is not wide enough to permit another tree to be planted in the center the way that the old tree in Mount Vernon was.
You can't plant it in the middle. No. Mm-mm.
Because I just like somebody explain to me why that is.
So the
Is it
road
just
isn't wide enough for a tree to be
There we go.
planted in the middle. It's a shorter width road than Tuscaloosa. So in this case, we can't even plant a tree in the middle. So the resident has agreed to, once we plant, to take care of the tree. And it will be located in the right of way adjacent to where the tree was located in the middle of the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, that had been my memory. So Madam Mayor, what you said makes perfect sense to me. I agree with that.
Okay. All right. Any other member of the council want to comment on that? Can I get a motion? Do we get a motion on that, George?
Just for
I move that we plant the 60-inch oak. Sorry,
an orc.
no, oak. Sorry, at Mount Vernon.
George. Before you move on a second, we need a little bit of clarity, I believe. If the town is purchasing the tree, the town goes to the lowest responsive bidder when we get informal bids. So in this case, it would be the lower nursery that you see on the list there for the 60-inch tree.
Yeah.
And so you also advise that if the residents wanted to financially support that, are you suggesting that the town's purchase would be lessened, or that they would upsize the tree from there and not the other way around?
If they want to participate, I think, and they don't want to upsize, but they want to participate in it, like, hey, I'll get it planted or something with the town, or pay for the planting, then that would lower our costs, which would be very, very helpful, because we don't have any budget for this. This was unforeseen. However, if their gift is to upsize the tree, then that would be on them as well.
So my thought would be the town should commit to a minimum amount that we're going to put in, and then residents should be consulted to see if they're willing to upgrade from there.
Yeah.
My confusion is, at what rate are we talking about? Because in the very beginning, what Sally was asking us for is a height, definition, and not the costs, even though the costs are in the staff report. So that's my confusion on this.
But it doesn't make sense.
Well, I know.
Can I ask a question of Sally for a second?
Yeah. Okay, Sally.
Sally, when you looked at these two nurseries, I think the primary difference in the 60-inch box, for example, of the cork oak was the size of the tree within that box. The age of the tree within that box varied by nursery. And so the price was different by nursery, as well as the size of the tree and the availability of the tree. So when you go out and look for a 60-inch cork oak tree, what's your process going to be in terms of determining what we're going to purchase?
So first I would see these two nurseries have confirmed they have the species and the size, but I would confirm yet again that they have the 60-inch box size and this type of species, as well as what's included in the planting. A certain amount of warranty is included in the planting. If I have a resident on Mount Vernon that wants to give extra money, I would want to confirm what they want to donate. so that I can see if we can afford that, if we can get the next size.
Next size up, but not next nursery, because you're looking at the lowest informal bid.
Yes. So, yeah, that's correct.
So in other words, in this case, for the 60-inch cork oak, we'd be looking at the tree
16,000.
movers. Yeah, the
So
tree movers.
I would just like to verify from Mary Lou Timpson whether or not she would really want a cork oak or the other Coke. Do you know? She's not on the call.
Yeah, so as a group of residents all together, they agreed on the cork oak and
Okay.
it was fine with cork oak. So that's the one I would like to stick with unless we want to change it.
No,
So
no,
It's a
yeah.
great tree.
I'm fine. Yeah.
It is a great tree, whether or not she wants it. It's
But it's going to be on her property. I wanted to make sure she likes it.
So right now, the lowest bid is from Tree Movers, and the cost of the cork oak would be $8,000 for the tree and the planting. That
Okay. And that's what we spend.
in all of the items.
Okay, so that's our bottom line. If residents want to contribute more to get a larger tree, I think that would be fine. Okay? Are we good with that?
All right, so then you'd need a motion, and I think Councilmember Whitmer made that motion or echoed it.
Right.
And then we need a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, Vice Mayor? Okay, let's do a roll call, Anthony.
Councilmember Hawkins,
Yes.
DeGolia,
Yes.
Whitmer,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Limpris,
Aye.
and Mayor Lewis.
Aye, okay.
Thank you. Just for the record, I don't know if you're still open to taking public comment, but we do have someone who has their hand raised.
Oh, Sharam, I didn't see you,
It
sorry.
just popped up. It just popped
Okay, yes, and he's on Mount Vernon, so please unmute and speak.
Thank you. Sally, one question. The 60 inch size you just mentioned is $8,000. Do you happen to know what the next size up and the corresponding cost will be?
I would estimate it to be about $12,000.
Okay.
And that would be probably an 86-inch box.
Okay. What I will do is I will send an email to the block residents on Mount Vernon Lane and put those numbers out there, approximately 12,000 and 86-inch box. I think we might be getting into the size of the right-of-way area on Mary Lou's property if we go to a larger box. But let me at least take that action item and get back to you, Sally, okay?
Okay.
Just
very nice.
to add, the other thing, Sally, I would just check on that, because with an 86-inch box, you're going to have about a 30-some-odd foot tree, probably 35-foot tree, and I'll bet it's going to require a crane.
Yeah.
So, that could be more than just this increase in the size of the tree.
Right.
The cost difference.
So Sally, why don't you do a little research on that and just get back to Sherham, please?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Sally. So before I send my email out, I'll wait to hear from you and then I will contact the residents. Thank you.
That sounds like a good. And Suzanne, you want to say something? She's going to unmute. Yes? There you go.
Sally, when I was just looking at the at the PDF that you sent, the difference between the two different nurseries, it shows that the less expensive nursery also is a smaller tree. Is that correct? Than the more expensive one?
So the trees from Moon Valley, they're considering they're 62 inches, more like 92-inch trees. And I think just this vendor is more expensive in general.
Okay.
I also think they're further away, so the cost of travel is more.
Okay, but the tree from Tree Movers is
an actual
smaller.
60-inch. It's smaller, but it's actually a 60-inch size tree.
Okay, I don't understand.
So sometimes nurseries, they pack trees in tighter, or they've actually had the tree at the nursery longer, so it's actually larger than what the box size is, which is not actually great. for the top of the tree. So he did tell me that they're 60-inch box, but they're actually more like a 90-inch box because they've either been there for a long time in the box.
So you really don't want a tree that's been in the box a long time because the roots get constrained.
Right.
I
And
see.
the critical issue is really, honestly, not the size of the tree, it's the health of the tree. Because
Okay.
if these trees are really healthy, they're going to grow very well as long as they're taken care of.
Okay, I just wanted to, smaller, bigger. I wanted to make sure we weren't, whatever.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
So now to the Tuscaloosa tree. Okay. And I think that from the discussion we've had before, there's some concerns over the size of the environment in the middle of the road that will accommodate the size of a tree that the residents want to have planted. And I think that our Public Works Director has been out there and measuring, I guess, the required legal size of the roadways, because unfortunately, we all have to live within the regulations of the state and the codes of the Uniform Municipal Code for roadways in size when you start repairing or replacing roads. And that's not something that we have a lot of wiggle room with. So I don't know what the conditions are to maybe encroach more onto the sides of the right-of-ways on the other people's properties, to widen the roads, to make a bigger median in environment for the tree. I don't know that. And so maybe we need more research to be done on that, because from what I heard, resident comments were that the residents felt that the size of the existing temporary median was not going to be sufficient for a tree to be replanted. That's just my initial understanding. If I've misunderstood, please correct me. And I'd like to hear from other council members first on how to approach this. And then we'll take more public comment. Mike?
Yeah, well, I guess my initial thought is I think it's very important that the tree go back in the middle of the road. And I know as a council, we've discussed that. I'm not sure we've been clear about that point in the past. I know staff's a little reluctant, but I think that is the right location for the tree. And I think Rick talked about how much that adds to the character of the neighborhoods. And I do think it slows traffic, and it just fits on Tuscaloosa there. So I personally think it's very important that we put a tree back in the center of the road. And I would love to have the answer to the questions you raised, Madam Mayor, about whether how wide that spot in the middle can be, and do we have any wiggle room to maybe make the roads, to encroach a little on the sides or something.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor. Any other council member? Mr. Widmer?
No, there's the question of the median, which I think George answered. And, and the minimum size of the road on both sides. And then, Sally would have to say, with the pavement on top and the compaction of the pavement, whether or not the tree is going to, a certain size tree is going to, thrive there. Hopefully it will, because the other one that we replaced did, but that's, we don't want to put a tree in there that's not going to live. So.
Right. I think that's the purpose also of the curb around the tree, is to give the tree the ability to establish itself and grow and have roots without cars driving too close to it. City Manager Rodrigues.
Madam Mayor, Mr. Council, if I could make perhaps a suggestion. The question you raised about widening the roadway is a good one. It's one we can't answer this evening, but I think it's one that would dictate what potential size of the tree we could actually end up with in that particular spot. So maybe it's council direction to staff could be to go back, have the city engineer look at the roadway And instead of starting from the outside in, start from the inside out and say, okay, at the trees going in the middle here, what's of a 60-inch box size at least, what size median is the healthiest for the tree? How wide does that need to be? And then design the roadway width needs and see where that lands, because it's going to end up taking the public right-of-way parking area of the two adjacent properties on either side. So that's a consideration for those property owners when they think about putting that tree in the middle of the road. And if we have those answers, then the council can make a better informed decision.
Okay. Does that sound like a good idea? I would like to do that and direct staff to bring this back to us in a council meeting in October.
Great. I'm okay with that.
Is that okay?
I think you've got a member of the public
Diana?
raising their hand there. Yeah.
Yeah, let me see. Oh, yes. Who's raising their hand?
Rachel, I believe.
Oh,
As somebody who owns a bit of property directly opposite the tree, I would be very happy to do that. I also would just love sort of confirmation that the company that you used to analyze the trees in both streets was also the company that you used to chop down the trees. Because I think that going forward, if you want to retain the trust of residents, you should separate the analysis of whether the tree is rotten from the people who commercially benefit from chopping it down.
okay. Good point. Yes, good point. I think we do. I don't think that they're same vendors. Just an aside. Okay. Well, then
A lady commented that they were the exact same vendor.
okay. I stand corrected, I guess. So anyway, okay, well, we'll close this item and we'll reopen it again after staff has brought us some more information. So thank you all for all of your.
Sorry, just to say, my computer crashed. It was Suzanne Parry, and I really do think, as elected officials, you need to consider that. The people who recommended chopping these trees down were the same people who financially benefited from them. And the fact that you don't know that as mayor really leads to a lack of trust in our community.
Oh,
and
so
I really appreciate everything you've said this evening, but I honestly cannot believe, and that's the first I've heard of it, that none of you know that. And it doesn't give you cause for concern.
Thank you, Rachel.
Actually, if I could rebut that, we do know who they are. Okay, we know who we've got a contract with for tree work in the town. We issue a contract, and then they got a separate contract to do the analysis from Sally. You know, why and how Sally selected them, you know, I don't know. I assume it's because we have a major contract with them. So, you know, not to debate this any longer, but the information is presented to the council, and you know, I think the accusation that the council it remains ignorant and the staff doesn't give us that information is wrong.
Well, I don't know. I guess the information or the reference was that we somehow allowed a vendor to give us false information to benefit him financially or them financially to cut down the tree.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't think that is anywhere near the case because of, you know, that's just not how our vendors work and that what we do as in choosing those vendors. Shram, you have your hand up. Thank you for being patient.
Thank you, thank you. When this issue first came up, I brought this matter up with the town people with regard to making sure we do not give the contract of chopping down the tree to the people who analyzed the tree in the first place. Because there is a financial incentive to chop down the tree. That's, I don't know, a $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 job. I do know I was there when the testing was done on the Mount Vernon tree. And I'm not a tree expert. I saw the software diagram that was showing, you know, a nice sort of much like an MRI, a cutaway of the tree. And it looked like the tree had about a 10% rotten side. Again, I'm not a tree expert. I would have looked at that and said, this tree is going to live another 10, 15 years at least. but the town was making a decision to take it down, and I agreed with that. But for future reference, I totally agree that those two jobs must not be given to the same company. Because no matter how much those companies tell you, oh, yes, we separate these issues, there's no Chinese wall, there's nothing between them. At the end of the day, the CEO of the company is going to say, I want the project to cut down the tree because it's a $70,000 job. So that's just a reference for the future, please.
Well, I'll take a closer look in the future. Thank you.
I believe the company was WCA.
Yeah, so the council approved the contract for West Coast Arborists many years ago. They're under contract with us, and they only are a municipal arborist. So they also work for Menlo Park. I think they also work for Palo Alto. So we only have one sole contractor that does anything, tree emergencies, pruning, tree removals. We recently had them do a report on a large tree in the park, and they didn't recommend it for removal. So I know they're not in the business of just recommending trees to be removed so they can make money. And they're not a private arborist. They're only a municipal arborist. And they're a reputable company.
Okay. George, you had something to offer.
I was just going to ask Sally to comment on that in terms of the arborist. And it's an independent arborist report that's produced by a certified arborist, and Sally reviews it internally as well.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. All right. We are going to move on. We're going to close this item, and it will be brought back to us at a future council meeting. Our next item is it's item number 17, and it is the consideration of a budget for the town center grand opening. City manager, you just...
I'll give it the open, and then you and Diana can run through the questions if you like. The ad hoc subcommittee of the Mayor Lewis and Councilmember Hawkins Manuelian was established to discuss and plan events for the grand opening of the new town center, which is coming up soon. At this time, it's expected that staff will be relocating to the new facilities around the first week of October, at least the admin staff. The police department staff is about 2 weeks following that. The hiccup's going to be the dispatch center. We need to make sure we get all the details with respect to the delay that's currently caused by COVID and microchips and delivery related to the technology systems for the dispatch center. So if those don't come in on time, the moving of dispatch may get delayed, and that may push things here and there. So that might affect the actual date. But the subcommittee came up with a number of questions that they wanted the council's feedback on. Those are listed within the staff report, as well as some comments associated with them. Staff recommends that there at least be a preliminary budget of about $25,000 for the event. But then that may be larger based on what type of event and some of the answers to the questions this evening. Madam Mayor, council member.
Thank you, George. So George and I took a walk through the town center this afternoon with one of our other residents, finance committee member, Bob Polito, and walked through, and there's a lot of activity going on there, but there's a lot of things still left to do. Diana, are you prepared? Would you like to kind of summarize our meeting? And, I think we could start with the potential end date that we're, the furthest out and then work back from there.
I'm sorry, I'm actually not prepared because I didn't know that I was going to.
Oh, that's okay. No. I just wanted to give you the opportunity. Yes. Well, so basically, let me just kind of quickly summarize, because this meeting is going on and on and on, and this is not going to be the last that you will hear from us on this. But basically, Diana and I met, and we got out our calendars, and we looked at, when, realistically, when is the ribbon cutting going to, potentially happen? And it kept going from late October to maybe the beginning of November to maybe even near Thanksgiving time. But then there's the whole Thanksgiving week and kids, and and then, well, then you get to, is it going to be on a weekday or a Saturday? Because as we get closer into the winter times, it gets dark early. It gets dark early. And at one point we looked at our darkness calendar, and it was going to be getting dark at around, 4:57, 5 o'clock at night. And, so basically we're thinking, and in talking with George about it a little bit more, if we targeted like December 4th, on a Saturday with from say 1 to 4, that kind of a Saturday when, we could have a kind of a combined, ribbon cutting and maybe Christmas party for the residents. It would give everybody a little bit of breathing room for getting the Civic Center, the Newtown Center, buttoned up. There's a tremendous amount of landscaping work outside, softscape and hardscape work to be done. As George just commented, there's supply chain issues starting to plug up the delivery of some of the critical items, like for the dispatch to get the PD moved over there. Although I think they're trying to work around in a creative way to maybe have dispatch, to take down dispatch in our existing building, let it go to Redwood City or Menlo Park for a period of time. But I don't think that that's gelled completely because of potential timing. If we start doing that, how long will you have that patch to deal with your dispatch? And dispatch is the heart and soul of the PD. So that's kind of how I understand the linchpin is going to be. I mean, we've got a whole list of things, and I guess tonight was sort of like a budget. And I think the budget of about 25,000 is a good beginning, a good start. I think that we could work within that, or if we find we can't, then we'll have to find a little bit more money as we go along. But I think the main thing is to have some realistic expectations about when this could all potentially happen. Diana?
Yeah, there were a bunch of specific questions that would really be helpful to get some direction from everybody else as to what you think. Like first understanding what kind of a size of an event. If we want to have an event that's really for the whole city, then you want to have it on a weekend. If you're not necessarily wanting it to be for everybody, then you can have it during the week.
Yeah.
The longer we wait, the more the price goes up, because once it goes into the winter season and starts to rain, then we're in risk of rain. We have to look at things like renting a tent. So if it gets too late, then it's going to be more expensive. So in that case, do we bifurcate and say, all right, if it gets too late, then we'll have a smaller event just as a ribbon cutting, and then have the bigger public event in the spring when more things are done. The other gating question is the yard. We're talking about having people walk through and tour some of the other buildings, not just having it indoor. But if the yard and the grounds and the lights and everything isn't in, then it's not necessarily a good idea to have everybody walking on it. So that's another argument for not having, if it goes too late, pushing it. So I guess for us, I'd like to get a feel for what's more important to everybody. Is it more important that we have the party sooner? Is it more important that we include more people? There's a bunch of trade-offs here.
Okay, so just with those basic parameters, I know it's late and you guys, I guess from my perspective, I think we want to go ahead, Rick, why don't you offer your opinion? Because, yeah.
I think that the way you phrased it, Diana, is really good. There are trade-offs. I agree with that. And I understand the issue of as we get into the winter, it gets dark earlier and the potential for rain begins. I think that, kind of the defining factor in this experience for me is that we've wanted this to happen sooner than it was realistic for it to happen. And I am very, very skeptical that this is really going to be ready for prime time before Thanksgiving. So I think Thanksgiving week is out. Forget it. So I think trying to make it happen the 4th of December, which is the first week after Thanksgiving, is tough. I think the first time that makes any sense is the 11th of December. And if that's just too late, too much into the winter, then I think the suggestion of doing something small, doing a ribbon cutting and doing a bigger deal in the spring makes a lot of sense. You're going to then have the planting coming in. The whole thing's going to be, looking much better. Whenever we do it, I don't think this should be an inside event. If you're talking about more than 100 people, it can't be an inside event. So it makes no sense to try to force it inside, because this is the biggest deal that's happened in our town in 100 years. And I think we should let anyone come that wants to come. So I think it should be on a weekend, and maybe it should wait till the spring. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, good. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Widmer, your comments.
Sure. First off, I agree with Rick that, a ribbon cutting and the official event should be when everything is done. Every ribbon cutting I've been involved in, we've had everything in place and it's in production. And sometimes it's long after we open the doors. But we have had specific number of donors, and they would be interested in something as soon as possible, even if it's not done. So I think having a two-part activity makes sense. Having something in the spring when the weather was nice. I saw you had a mention of a band. Okay, maybe I'm not keen on that, but if we're going to have some other activities out there and have the whole town there, that does make sense. I'm not sure 500 people will come personally. I think it's more like the 300 size. So I see a two-part thing. I think that we should, as staff is moving in there, even if everything is not 100% done, we have a smaller group. Maybe it's 100, 150, however many donors we have. Bring them in, let them have a tour, welcome them, have some beverages, and then have a real event, a party for the whole town, a fair essentially for the whole town. That would include the library, would include whatever else we're doing in the civic court, and that would be held in the civic court with tours thereafter in the individual rooms. That's what I think.
Okay. Councilor, just your thought, the civic court with a smaller group initially, before the civic court really would not be an outside venue for this type of a party, because it probably would not be finished.
Yeah, the smaller group would be in the lobby, as you all have suggested.
Yeah.
The larger group would be at the civic court. That would hold a lot of people from the community.
Right. Agreed. And that would be ideal. But Vice Mayor Lempres?
Yeah, so I guess my first thought is I want to make really sure that we don't allow any slippage in the grand opening to affect in any way our aggressiveness in getting the project done. So I just want to make sure that our primary focus is getting the project done, and this is an ancillary nice thing that we'll do, but I want to make sure we get that done. So having said that, I agree with what Bill just said. I think it makes sense to me to maybe bifurcate this and have a big public event in the spring, and a smaller, more focused event, when it's ready. It's, by the way, just as an aside, it's wonderful to hear us talking about rain. So I hope that actually happens this week.
Yeah. It'd be nice.
Yeah. So that's where I am. I do think it'd be nice to have the landscaping along and things like that before we had a big public opening.
Probably at least the hardscape and stuff, maybe I don't know, but you walk through it today and it's hard to visualize that it will be done, because this is the middle of September. Anyway, so I think at that point, Diana, I think that's a little bit good direction for us. And we can kind of go back and noodle on it a little bit more. And right now, I think what we're talking about, why don't we get the budget approved? And if we feel like we need more as it goes on, we'll come back with our handout. Does that seem reasonable? So do I need a motion on this? Okay, I'd like to move that we get a budget of $25,000 for the ribbon cutting grand opening of the new town center approved. And I think Diana seconded, but she was muted.
Okay, I'll take the second.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hawkins, then
Yeah.
thank you. I see that. DeGolia,
Yes.
Widmer,
Aye.
Vice Mayor,
Aye.
and Mayor.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Okay. So item 18, town center project update. Marty.
Is not on the line,
information?
but you have the written report there, and many of you have walked through the site recently. Happy to walk through again.
Anybody have any questions about it right now? No? Okay, let's just move on. Item number 19 is something that is long awaited. City manager performance evaluation and approval of the amendment to the city manager's employment contract. And Mona, I think you're going to kind of tee this up for us, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Lewis, members of the council. Tonight before you, you are being asked to consider the approval of the 8th amendment to the employment contract with the city manager. The city has, in recent history for the past several years, conducted 2 evaluations of the city manager. The first, which would occur in January and address the potential for a bonus, and the second around the March timeframe and consider an increase to salary and compensation. Going forward, we have discussed doing a consolidated evaluation so that this is only brought to you one time. But again, to track previous practice, the council did meet in closed session, and the ad hoc committee then separately met with the manager to discuss a potential increase. There was a salary survey that was also reviewed, and as a result, what's being proposed is an increase in the city manager's salary by $11,427, which would mean that his base pay would go from $233,196 to $244,623. There's 2 purposes behind this increase. One, it is a cost of living adjustment that was provided to other staff and not to the city manager since July. And the second is to also bring parity to other comparable communities for which town managers are making this type of compensation, and also to reward him for great performance. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you, Mona. Any member of the council have a question for Mona? I see Mr. Widmer has his hand raised.
Sure. Thank you. Mona, during the discussions that we had at the beginning of the year, we spoke about actually aligning the bonus activity with the raise, so that we would consider his total performance at one time and then award him of the raise and then a bonus like other communities do. And I believe that there was a majority of people that indicated that they thought that that was a good idea. That would also have eliminated the issue where we had a council member go off the council and suddenly there's a brand new person who didn't even know George, his performance over a year or even a period of time, and then making a vote and pushing one way or the other. So I thought that we had agreed to that, and in the document, I don't see that we're doing that. So I would like to understand why that decision was made, and why, if it decided it wasn't made, why it wasn't brought to the full council for discussion.
So I believe your previous city attorney had opined that 2 performance evaluations were necessary or appropriate. I don't think that it's legally required. You can have all of the evaluations conducted in one meeting. And I agree that a majority of the council did direct that for the future. However, that direction was provided to me just recently, a couple meetings ago. And so it would not be able to be effectuated until the next round of evaluations. And we will do that going forward. But in order to review and approve the compensation increase, this had to come before you at this time.
I don't have a problem with the compensation increase, but I would, because there was also a compensation increase in January, and it'd be nice to have everything put together. And the previous city council, the counselor actually opined on a lot of things, some of which actually weren't based on fact. I don't mean to discredit Mr. Connors, but there were some things that he indicated that research indicated that was his opinion, not necessarily his fact. I would like to see that we would have these 2 things done at the same time because it makes sense for many, many different reasons.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. And I think Mona did respond to you that going forward, that is our intent. So Any other member of council have a comment about this? Vice Mayor, Rick?
I just say that this is something I strongly support. I think it's a reasonable increase for the city manager.
Okay, I think so.
I do have, I'm sorry, one more comment to make. This would be retroactive to August. And the reason for that is because by state law, the council cannot make any adjustments to executive management compensation at a special meeting. And for that reason, I did advise staff that we would have to push this back to the September meeting. But it should have been brought to you in August. So I did want to make you aware of that.
I think it was indicated in the staff report that that's what it would be. Okay. Any other member? Rick, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just have a question of clarification. So the salary component here is 2 consumer price index adjustments. One that is 2.9% from last January, and a second one that is 2% from this July. That's what's in the staff report. And is that right?
Correct. That is correct. The manager does have a provision in his contract that he will be allowed parity with other unrepresented employees. So when they have increases, he would automatically receive the same. He did not receive an increase in compensation when the unrepresented employees, and the manager is saying no.
So his contract hasn't had an increase either in salary or bonus for more than a year, obviously.
Well, the bonus was provided in earlier this year. But again, the council had historically bifurcated the review. So there was a performance bonus, and then the salary based on cost of living adjustments was made separately. That's what's
I'm confused by 2 cost of living increases, because I think most staff just get 1 cost of living increase a year, not 2. So why is there 2 cost of living increases?
Just to clarify, the city attorney mentioned that my contract has the provision that it's automatic. We made it no longer automatic. We specifically separated it so that the council would have to consider whether you give one to me when at the same time you give one to staff.
Right.
And so in January of this year, staff received the 2.9% CPI. And then in July of this year, staff received the 2% CPI for the coming 21-22 fiscal year. So that's why there's 2 of them in there. Staff received both of them. So that's why there's 2 under consideration today.
And I must say that we've gone through this once before, and then there was an ad hoc committee created with the vice mayor and the mayor to review and discuss with the city manager about this. And the decision that vice mayor and the mayor arrived at was that this was kosher. It was, according to what his contract said, and well deserved. And am I saying that correctly, Vice Mayor? And
one other note while the
Yes.
Vice Mayor's unmuting, sorry, thanks.
I apologize. I have to flip back and forth between the packages and the Zoom call. So, but yes.
Robert just reminded me that Councilmember DeGolia, the one that was received in January, if you recall, the council postponed it. It was actually supposed to be July 1 of 2020, but because we were unsure of what was going to happen with the pandemic, the council postponed that CPI for staff until January. That's why they were so close in time.
Thank you.
okay. Any other comments? I'll offer it up to the public for any comments. I'll bring it back. I just have to say, I think that this is well deserved, and on the, the chart of comparison to other city managers, George ranks very high in accomplishments and leadership, and quite low in the compensation ranks. Also, there has to be a little bit more separation between him and the next in line, not in line, but the chief of police. And that was becoming very, very close. And you just don't want that to occur. So I'm going to call for a motion to approve this amendment to his employment agreement. Or I'll make that motion myself and Vice Mayor.
I'm happy to move or second. So if you,
I'm just wanting to confirm that there's no public comment on this, Mayor.
Well, I thought I opened it up to public comment, but I guess I didn't give them a chance. I didn't see any raised hands.
No, none were present.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I made the motion to approve the amendment number 8 to the employment agreement between Town of Atherton and George Rodericks. And Vice Mayor seconded.
Second.
Roll call, please, Anthony. Oh, you're muted.
Councilmember Hawkins,
Yes.
DeGolia,
Yes.
Widmer,
Okay.
Vice Mayor Lempress,
aye.
and Mayor Lewis.
Yes, thank you. Council reports and comments? Anybody have any council reports?
Before you head on to that one, Madam Mayor, we need to back up to item number 9.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
okay.
Forgot about that. Man, it's been so long. I forgot about that.
But you were so passionate about, oh no, that was something else you were passionate about.
I've been passionate about several things in here. This
Yeah.
was just a suggestion. This was a
Yeah.
suggestion, okay,
Yeah,
that I brought up to
okay.
George, and he said, just mention it. That, we've had this contract for a long time, and even in the staff report, it's reported that there's been very much growth in his business here. And we've seen some growth in people taking keys out. I'm not going to say we haven't, because I verified that with George. However, it's been $40,000 for years. And so maybe not this year, because it's already been negotiated for $40,000. But in the future years, since we want to actually invest a little bit more in our tennis program here, why don't we consider raising it up to $50,000 or $60,000 with the negotiation with Michael Jessup? I think that's reasonable.
Yeah. Well, I think that what is reasonable is that we revisit it. We don't lock in the contract rate right now today, but we negotiate it at that future date when we renew the contract, because I don't feel that we can arbitrarily pull a number out of our hats, like you said. Earlier you said, well, 50,000. Now you said 50 or 60,000. Like you're throwing around numbers.
Well, I don't know what his numbers are, Elizabeth. I don't know how much his business has grown, and actually, it's none of our business. We should decide what we want to get out of it.
Yeah. Well, I'm not ready to do that tonight. So, any other council member have a comment on
Yeah,
this?
I have a comment on it, which I think we're looking at 2 one-year extensions. Is that what we're looking at
Mhm.
through this agreement? And
Mhm.
it makes sense to me that one of them needs to get done. We should do the first extension with regard to the second extension. I think we ought to at least give management or staff the authority to negotiate a higher
I
fee
do.
if one's possible.
Yeah.
So this-
I do not want to set a price at this time.
So this
No,
is
but this-
2-year with 2 one-year extensions.
I'm
It's
sorry, so how many years
One
total?
2-year. It's a
It's a
2-year
2-year
term.
agreement with
Yeah.
2 single-year extensions beyond it.
Yeah, I think the 2-year term is just fine as it is. But then when the extensions come up, we can renegotiate.
And that was my comment. My
Yeah,
comment
but
was.
you
set
made
number-
it seem like you wanted to set the number.
No, I said a number like, okay? And so I just don't believe we should be locked in for the next 5 years at $40,000. That's my point.
Mhm. Rick, do you have a comment?
I'd move that we approve the agreement and leave the rate open to be discussed for each extension.
Yes, I agree with that. I
Okay,
second it.
Widmer seconded it. Roll call. George?
Madam Mayor, don't forget public comment on the item.
Are there any public?
Okay, well, I don't see any hands raised. I'll open it up to the public comment. Oh, hi, Mike.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, Michael.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna comment. No, I appreciate that. Well, like you said, well, tennis is doing well right now. So, it is up, which is great. And I think in 2 years, if it keeps going, yeah, I think we could definitely renegotiate and I wouldn't mind. But I do appreciate like this 2 years because there was the 3-month period where me or any of the coaches didn't get to work at all. And it took a little bit of time. It's probably about 4 or 5 months of, where we took a big hit. So, now tennis as an industry is up about 30 to 40%, which is great. So we're kind of making up for those, but it takes a time period. So, I think it would be great to, have this 2 years at the same rate to, and then go from there.
Great, thank
Okay.
you. Any other member of the public like to make a comment on this? If not, I'll thank you, Michael, for being here and for your service to the town. So we have a motion and a second and a roll call, please.
Councilmember Hawkins,
Yes.
DeGolia,
Yes?
Widmer,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Lemprus,
Aye.
and Mayor Lewis.
Aye.
Thank you.
And with that, we'll call for an adjournment. Thank you all for everything. It's middle of September. We won't see you again until October.
It's just 2 weeks. That's just 2 weeks away. Come on.
No, but every day.
It's 11 o'clock where Diana's at.
Thanks,
Yeah,
everybody.
but she's
10
still
o'clock.
on San Francisco time.
Motion
Okay.
motion to adjourn.
Good night.
Good
Right.
night.
All right, see you
Bye.
later. Bye-bye.